Fear is not the enemy outside of us. It is the shadow we create within. A man can walk through fire, endure hunger and face the sword, yet tremble at the thought of tomorrow because he has surrendered his mind to phantoms. The Stoics teach that what frightens us most is not reality itself, but the stories we tell ourselves about what reality might become. If you remove those stories, if you see things as they truly are, fear dissolves into air. You will find that you are left only with what is real, and reality is rarely as unbearable as imagination paints it. Fear thrives in the future, but strength lives only in the present moment. When you return your mind to this instant, you weaken fear's hold, for the present always proves survivable. The first law is to control what is within your power and to accept with calm what lies beyond it. You are not the master of the weather, of fortune, of the moods of other men, or of the frailty of the body. You are the master only of your own judgment, your choices, your words, your actions. If you demand mastery where you cannot have it, you will remain a slave to chance, forever tossed like a ship without an anchor. But if you withdraw your concern from the uncontrollable and place it firmly on your own reason and will, you become untouchable. Fortune can storm around you, yet you stand unbroken, because your peace no longer depends upon her. The second law is to remember that pain is bearable, but fear of pain is the true tormentor. Many times we do not suffer from what we endure, but from what we anticipate. The body can withstand far more than the mind dares to believe. Hunger sharpens discipline, cold hardens resolve, fatigue passes, but fear multiplies each sensation, whispering that you cannot bear it, that it will destroy you. The wise man learns to separate pain from the judgments that inflate it. When you see pain as nothing more than a physical signal, a guest that comes and leaves, it loses its power to tyrannize. The dagger may wound the flesh, but fear wounds the soul. The third law is to build an inner citadel that no storm can breach. The world outside is full of accidents, loss of wealth, betrayal, illness, death. If your peace depends upon the absence of these, then you have built your happiness upon sand. The Stoic builds instead upon stone, creating within himself a fortress of principle and reason. When fortune strikes, he may bend, but he does not break, for he has withdrawn his true treasure from her reach. His calm does not rest on things but on character, and therefore he cannot be robbed. A man who has secured his inner citadel is invincible, for even when stripped of everything, he still possesses himself. The fourth law is to discipline the mind so that the body may obey. Weakness does not come from the muscles but from the lack of command within. If the mind is scattered, indulgent, ruled by impulse, the body follows like a drunken servant. But when the mind is sharpened through self-control, every motion becomes deliberate, every word chosen, every desire examined. Discipline is freedom, because it rescues you from the tyranny of appetite and fear. When you wake, rise not because it is pleasant, but because it is your duty. When hardship comes, endure it not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. By training the mind to rule, you set yourself free from the chaos of chance and become master of yourself. In these laws lies the path to conquering fear, doubt, and weakness. They do not promise that life will be without struggle, for that would be a lie. Struggle is the condition of living and pain its companion. But they promise that you may live unshaken, that you may walk through storms without being carried away, that you may face the gaze of death itself without trembling. For what is fear except the refusal to trust in your own reason? What is doubt except the surrender of your judgment to the noise of the crowd? What is weakness except the forgetfulness of your own power over your mind? To be stoic is not to be stone, but to be firm as stone when the winds howl. It is to feel fear rising within you and answer it with clarity. It is to meet pain with endurance, loss with dignity, insult with silence, and fortune with gratitude. The man who lives by these laws may be wounded but never defeated, shaken but never destroyed. He learns that his true self cannot be harmed, for it is beyond the reach of both men and fate. This is the strength that conquers fear, the clarity that silences doubt, the resilience that overcomes weakness. Doubt is a more subtle enemy than fear. Fear shows itself openly, but doubt whispers in secret. Fear shouts that the danger is great, but doubt suggests that you are small. It creeps into the soul telling you that you are unprepared, unworthy, incapable, and once you listen, you begin to hesitate. Hesitation then becomes habit, and habit turns into weakness. The Stoics understood that the greatest obstacle is not in the world, but in the judgments we make about ourselves. You are not weak because the world is hard. You are weak only when you persuade yourself that you cannot endure it. The task, then, is not to remove hardship but to correct the judgment that weakness is inevitable. The fifth law is that reason must always rule over impulse. The untrained mind is like a city with broken gates open to every invader. Anger rushes in, greed storms the walls, despair seeps through the cracks, and the man becomes a captive of every passing mood. But reason is a guard who shuts the gates and decides what may enter. If you consult reason before action, you will find clarity where others find confusion. Anger may demand vengeance, but reason asks if justice is served. Fear may warn you of loss, but reason reminds you that loss is nothing when the self remains whole. Desire may lure you with promises, but reason exposes its cost. To live without reason is to live as prey. To live with reason is to be free. The sixth law is that adversity reveals strength, never weakness. Many curse hardship, thinking it is the destroyer of peace. Yet hardship is the forge in which character is shaped. Fire does not weaken iron. It hardens it. Storms do not break the oak. They drive its roots deeper. So too, adversity does not ruin the man of principle. It proves him. You do not know your courage until danger arrives, nor your patience until delay tests you, nor your wisdom until folly surrounds you. To flee from adversity is to flee from growth. For ease makes men soft, while struggle makes them strong. When you meet difficulty, do not complain that fate is cruel. Instead, give thanks that fate has found you worthy of testing. Only the untested are unproven, and only the proven can be great. The seventh law is to detach from desire, for desire is the chain that binds the soul. Fear often rises not from what is before us, but from the thought of losing what we cling to. A man who longs for wealth fears poverty. A man who craves approval fears rejection. A man who clings to life itself trembles at death. But the man who learns to detach fears nothing, for nothing essential can be taken from him. Detachment is not the absence of love, but the purification of it. Love your family, but know they are mortal. Enjoy wealth, but know it may vanish. Pursue honor, but know it cannot add virtue to your soul. When you desire only what lies within your control, your character, your actions, your judgments, then you stand unchained, fearless before the loss of all else. The eighth law is to live according to nature, not the opinions of men. Society invents endless measures of worth, titles, riches, beauty, applause. But these are shifting illusions, changing with the crowd's mood. If you build your value upon them, you will live in perpetual doubt, for you cannot control the shifting winds of others' voices. To live according to nature is to live by the law of reason and virtue, to align your will with the order of the universe itself. The sun does not ask for praise when it rises. The river does not demand applause as it flows. They fulfill their nature silently, and so must we. Do not ask whether men approve, but whether you act rightly. Do not ask whether fortune favors you, but whether you remain steadfast. The man who lives by nature needs no witnesses, for his own reason is his proof. Doubt cannot stand against these laws. When reason rules impulse, you act not from fear, but from clarity. When adversity reveals strength, you begin to welcome trials as teachers. When detachment frees you from desire, you stand beyond the reach of fortune. When you live by nature and not by opinion, you silence the noise of the crowd and find harmony within. Doubt loses its voice when the soul knows its foundation, and that foundation is reason aligned with virtue. Thus, the Stoic does not ask for an easy life, but for a mind that cannot be shaken. He does not beg for fortune's favor, but for the wisdom to stand firm when fortune withdraws it. He does not seek endless approval, but the quiet assurance that he has lived as nature intended. The man who holds these truths no longer doubts himself, for he knows he is prepared for whatever comes. And in that knowledge he finds a peace deeper than victory, a strength beyond circumstance, and a freedom untouched by fate. Weakness is not the absence of strength, but the refusal to call it forth. Men are not born fragile. They become fragile when they forget what is within them. The body can endure hunger, cold, and wounds, yet the spirit collapses at the weight of opinion, at the loss of gold, at the passing of comfort. Weakness thrives when the soul confuses what is essential with what is trivial. The Stoics remind us that the essence of man is not in possessions or applause, but in reason and virtue, in the will that cannot be enslaved. When you forget this essence, you stumble. When you remember it, you rise unshaken. To conquer weakness, one must first strip away illusions. Illusions tell you that strength is measured by wealth, that honor is given by the crowd, that peace is found in leisure. These are lies, for the wealthy man may tremble, the honored man may despair, and the idle man may rot in discontent. True strength comes only from ruling oneself. A man who cannot govern his own desires who cannot master his own tongue, who cannot stand against his own fears, is weaker than the poorest beggar. Weakness is not in the muscles but in the mind that surrenders to appetite and fear. Therefore, the work of the Stoic is not to harden the flesh but to fortify the soul. Consider how often men betray themselves for comfort. They avoid silence because their own thoughts disturb them. They avoid hardship because they dread discomfort. They cling to routine pleasures because they fear emptiness without them. Each act of avoidance strengthens weakness. For every fear we yield to becomes a master. The man who flees from cold becomes its slave. The man who resists it learns to conquer it. The man who bows to opinion becomes a puppet. The man who ignores it walks free. Weakness multiplies when indulged but fades when confronted. Thus, each day offers you a chance to feed your weakness or to strengthen your soul. Strength is not born in great victories but in small choices. Rising early when sloth whispers to remain. Speaking truth when silence would be easier. Enduring insult without retaliation. Giving generously when greed urges restraint. These are the victories, that build the fortress of character. No man becomes strong in an instant. Strength is the child of discipline, and discipline is practiced moment by moment. Weakness seeks excuses, but strength seeks duty. The man who remembers his duty cannot remain weak, for duty lifts him above himself and teaches him to endure for something greater than comfort.